Well, hello there, you technically minded person. Welcome to Command Block Insider for episode 16. So in this episode of CBI, I'm going to be showing you how to make that moving warp drive that you saw in episode 16. Oops. The regular episode 16. So, there's a lever behind here. It's pretty basic redstone, just on and then off turns this on. See, currently it's off, so that would have triggered this command block. So basically there's just two command blocks you have to worry about. This other stuff is just fancy stuff that I did. You don't need it at all. So just focus on these two. So when it turns on, there's a set block command, right? Which sets a redstone block. Now, it actually sets a redstone block over here, but for purposes of this explaining thingy, I'm going to pretend that it sets it here, because this is the fastest speed. So I figure if you're only going to make one of these, you're going to want the fastest one because it looks the coolest. These other ones are just different speeds. So this is the slowest speed, this is medium, and this is really fast. This is the one you want. This is the one that looks the coolest, and this is the one that it stays on too, actually. And that's what this stuff is. Whoops. These things that just makes it change the different speeds. But we're just going to be focusing on one currently. So, pretty simple. You just use a set block command. Now, the relative coordinates, you're going to want to make sure that they're to the right place. So, whoa, bumped my mouse, I guess. The way to figure out relative coordinates is to press F3. See, like when you, this is regular, and then you press F3 and you get the F3 debug screen. Now in the middle, you'll notice there's a little axis indicator. That it pretty much tells you which axis is which. Now it's really easy to figure out which one's which, because it's actually organized quite nicely. So, have you ever heard of RGB? Red, green, blue? That's a color thing. Well, it actually helps us in this case because, here, let me just go into this command block again. Focus on here. Ignore this stuff. Look here. So we have red, green, blue. Now there's three axes, X, Y, and Z, and it matches up perfectly. X, Y, Z. Red, green, blue. X, Y, Z. So red is X, green is Y, and blue is Z. It's really simple. Now, there's positive and negative values on each axis. So how do you know which one is which? Well, you think of it this way. Imagine that each line coming out from there is an arrow. So put like a little arrow there, arrow there, arrow there. And this is kind of like 0. Although if you're looking in this direction, then it's negative. But imagine each of these little bars like an arrow, and that tells you which way is positive. So right now, the red X is pointing that way. So that means positive X is this way. And if you look on our F3 debug screen in the top left, you'll see it says towards positive X. So you can use that to figure out relative coordinates. So like counting from this command block, I would see that it's -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So -14 for Z, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for X. And they're on the same Y level, so we don't have to worry about that. Oh, speaking of which, this little thingy here, which is over, it's to the left of your 1 key. If you just press shift and then that button, that little thing appears, and that just means relative. So it means take the Y value of this command block. Exactly that. So when you put numbers after it, then it means get the this is Z, so X, Y, Z. So get the Z value of this command block and then go 1 in the Z direction. Now, like I said, this actually does this one actually controls that, but we're pretending that it does that. So it would say -10 or whatever we just figured out. So that's how you do that. And then same thing pretty much for the off. This happens to be a fill, but you can do a set block that will do the exact same thing and just find the relative coordinates of here again, but make sure you set it to air. So when it's on, set block, relative coordinates, then you do redstone block. When it's off, set block, relative coordinates, and then air. And 0 and replace in this case is optional, but it's good practice to put it. So now that we have turned it on, supposedly, and there's a redstone block right here, we want this kind of clock thingy running. So there's two commands, or two command blocks that will run the clock. In this case, it is these two command blocks. So this one kind of on the bottom here, it's pretty basic command, it's just a fill command, and it's using relative coordinates, so 1 in the x, which happens to be right there in the middle, and then you have to set the two separate corners of a box that you want filled, which this case is the exact same block, so it's just the same set of coordinates. Now, the way that these kind of clocks work is you want to place a quartz block, and then you want to do 0, replace redstone block. So that way it only replaces redstone blocks. And then as it places a quartz block, then this one will put a redstone block there that replaces click, 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 a quartz block. So then they kind of just run back and forth until you turn it off, and then it sets the middle to air. Because if the middle is air, this is trying to replace quartz. So is air quartz? No. So it can't do anything. Now this one's trying to replace redstone. Is air redstone? Nope. So these two will both stop. So it's a really nice way to turn on and off one of the fastest clocks in the game. Actually, the fastest clock in the game. It runs literally as fast as Minecraft goes. So next, for the actual warp drive, you're going to want 3 more command blocks. Now, the first one that gets triggered is going to be this one. And the reason that I know that is because when a redstone block gets placed here, command blocks have a specific order of operations, and it's actually related to the x-axis the axis thingies that we just learned. So if a redstone block gets placed where I'm standing right now, then commands will get triggered in order from X, Y to Z, and then negative to positive on each of those. So negative X currently is this one. So this gets triggered first, and this is part of the clock. Second, it triggers this thing, which I'll get to in just a little bit. Third, it triggers the this playsound thing. Fourth, it triggers another part of the warp drive, and then finally, fifth, it triggers the last part of the clock. So it's important to note that you want this command block before that one, and I'll explain why. So this one is a clone command. Now, a clone command is much like the fill command, where you need 2 corners. So this is one corner right here, and then these are the first 2 corners. So this specifies the area that you want to clone, which in our case is that middle warp drive thingy. So you would figure out the relative coordinates of the entire what do you want to call it? A core, I guess. Then this last set of coordinates decides where to move it to, or where to clone it to. And because we're using move over here, then it will move it rather than clone it a second one. So this is the lower northwest corner. That's how it decides it, which is basically the negative direction of all the axes. So that's how you figure that out. In our case, we just want it to be 1 block up. So if we go over here to the actual warp drive, so I can kind of point at some things, basically what's happening is the clone command clones all this core right here and pushes it up 1. So now there's nothing in the bottom currently. There's an empty space in the bottom right now. And all of this stuff is pushed up 1. So we want to fix that empty spot in the bottom, right? Well, the way we're going to do that is take the top one, which is actually inside the ceiling, and clone that and put it down here. So that's why it's important to have those command blocks in order, because if it takes the top and then puts it like that and then clones it, you're going to have a big empty space on here all the time. So you want to make sure you clone the main part of it first and then do the single block last. So this is the one that clones the main part of the core, and this is the one that's going to clone the very top. So like before, that's one corner of the box that it's going to clone, that's the second corner. So that defines what it's going to clone, and this defines where it's going to place that block. Now in this case we only specified 1 block, so it just, you'll notice down here it just says 1 block's cloned. So that's pretty much how that works. So the last little bit is actually the simplest part, really, of it all. We just have a play sound effect. So this command's really simple. You just type in play sound, you specify the sound that you want, which in this case is ambient.cave.cave, and that actually plays a few different random sounds, you know, the sound like when you're near a dark cave. Then you specify who you want to play it to, which this can just be at all. In my case it's just at P because I'm on a single player world. And then this specifies, this set of coordinates right here, XYZ, specifies where to play it from. So in this case I made it to play from the middle of the warp drive. So if we, and I'll show you in a minute when we turn it on, if we move away from it, the sound actually gets quieter and disappears entirely. So this last one is extremely important. This is the volume. If you ignore this, it will automatically set it to be volume 1, and that is quite loud. So make sure that you set this to 0.2 or 0.3 or something that you're happy with. I imagine you probably don't want it at 1 because that's just ridiculous. So now that you kind of understand all that stuff, let's run it again, and I'll sort of you can kind of see what's happening. So it's running again, and you notice it's going up. So slow motion, it's like it's cloning the core up 1, then it's taking the top part that has been teleported into the ceiling and it's sticking it at the bottom, and it's doing this so fast that it looks like it's a smooth animation. Now you hear the sound. Now listen as we move away from it. See? You can't even hear it anymore. You probably can just only hear the fan on my computer because it just got loud for some reason. It does that every so often. Anyway, if we get closer again, you can hear it very clearly, especially when you're right next to the warp thingy. So that's how that works. It's really, really, really simple for such a cool an effect. Such a cool effect. Sticking extra words in there for some reason. So, I mean, that's really all there is to it. Feel free to go back through the video, pause it, make sure you're copying the codes down, and make sure to put your own relative coordinates. You can copy all of the commands I used. In fact, they're in the description, except the relative coordinates part. That you have to discover yourself, and that's why I explained it to you, because otherwise it's just not gonna work. But I hope you enjoyed this command block insider, and give me feedback about it too, because this is kind of a trial thing. It seems like a pretty good idea to me, but I'm not a viewer, you know, so I can't get that that perspective that you guys have. So I would love to hear what you have to say about it. Do you like the Command Block Insider? You want more of it? Do you think I should just combine both of them together? You know, whatever it is. So that's all for this Command Block Insider episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you are able to make this warp drive thing without any difficulties and have a lot of fun with it. So until next time, this is Talon 2863 signing off.